Well, thanks so much for inviting me here, and thanks so much all of you for coming. I'm going to base what I have to say here on the motto of one of the great law enforcement officers of all time, which is Sergeant Joe Friday. And his motto was, "Just the facts, ma'am." So what I'm going to give you is just the facts. Little quick synopsis of the absolutely documented, objective, real history of CIA military mind control experimentation, most of it done by psychiatrists, psychologists. And this for sure is just the declassified tiny tip of the iceberg, but it's definitely is fact, and it's definitely stranger than fiction. And since I'm the only person who has slides tonight, you got to watch my slide the whole time. These are the two books that I've written on the subject of CIA military mind control. And this is my contact information for anybody who wants to email or has a question and so on. So before I get into the facts, I want to tell you a story that's obviously preposterous and impossible. Just to give you, here's the facts at this end, here's the impossible and the preposterous at this end. And this is clearly a false memory story which couldn't possibly be true. So a woman alleged that she was employed at the University of Minnesota as a research assistant to one of the professors, and that this professor had given her a dose of LSD and made her sit in a specially constructed room that was entirely lined with leaves. There was leaves glued to the wall. And she alleged that this happened under a nationally funded research grant in the 1960s in full public view at the University of Minnesota. And she alleged that the LSD resulted in a bad trip and she had to be treated in the emergency department. So if this woman came to a court of law, many psychiatrists and psychologists would testify that this is obviously impossible, preposterous, not real, no such thing ever happened. Well, take a look at the next slide. This is the Ames Leaf Room, developed by Dr. Ames on contract to the Office of Naval Research. The Ames Leaf Room was used in experiments at the University of Minnesota conducted by Dr. Amedeo Marazzi on contract to the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. And this is one of his papers, and in the paper, on the first page, it says that it was funded by the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. So these are facts. And this is a picture, actually from a different paper, of another subject in the Ames Leaf Room. And he's sitting here. He has levers here that he can control with his hand. And in some of the experiments, the subjects were wearing special goggles with lenses called anisoconic lenses, which distorted all the angles. So when they're sitting in the Ames Leaf Room, one wall's going this way, the floor's going this way, nothing meets up and makes any sense. So they would be in the Ames Leaf Room wearing anisoconic lenses while on hallucinogenic doses of LSD. And this guy is controlling these knobs to make this bar at the end of the leaf room appear to him to be horizontal. The conclusion from this research was that when you're high on LSD, wearing anisoconic lenses, your perception is distorted. But Amedeo Marazzi was not an amusing gentleman. He was a contractor at the Army Chemical Corps at Edgware Arsenal, and he studied many different types of compounds for mind control, to cause derangements of the mind. He was contracted to the military, and the military was conducting this research not to figure out how to treat medical disorders, but how to conduct interrogations, drag information out of people, and erase memories. This is a photograph, and there's the web page at the bottom here. Somebody emailed to me, and I went to the web page where the photograph is posted. And this is a little girl, according to the photograph, this is unverified, who participated in a CIA mind control program called MK Ultra. Now, whether or not this photograph is staged or real, this is a picture of the kind of documented experiments that were done under MK Ultra and related programs, where people were kept in bed for weeks or months at a time, given extremely high doses of electric shock. One woman I interviewed, whose medical records I have, who successfully sued the Canadian government and was reimbursed for the damages, from May to September 1965, she had 103 electric shock treatments. Each electric shock treatment, the button was pushed 6 times instead of once. So she had the equivalent of 600 shock treatments in a period of months, which permanently erased all memory from age 25 back. When I interviewed her in the 1990s, she was a very pleasant, normal, gifted, engaging, entertaining, lovely woman who still could remember nothing from age 25 back. These experiments were conducted at the university in Montreal, McGill University, which at the time was really the leading university in Canada, on contract to the Canadian government and to the CIA. And the purpose of the experiments, obviously, is to figure out how to wipe out somebody's memories permanently if they know things that you don't want them to know. This is just a quick listing of the main declassified projects, which started in the early 50s. Bluebird and Artichoke were actually signed into existence by the director of the CIA in April of 1950, 3 months before the start of the Korean War. So the idea that we only got into this in a reactive defensive kind of mode based on what the North Korean and Communist Chinese were doing to our pilots is complete lie, complete disinformation, impossible, not true. So there's a whole series of these projects, and these are just their names. The names sometimes have some specific meaning and sometimes apparently don't. MK Naomi was named after the secretary of one of the guys in the CIA. And the prefix MK apparently designates the division of the CIA that ran these experiments. So there's many of them, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. But they all stop in terms of declassified documents in the early 1970s. All the programs running from then till now are still classified. Was this just some mad scientist in a basement somewhere? This is just a little quick sampling of the institutions that were funded under Bluebird, Artichoke, MKUltra, and other related programs, almost all of them at the top secret clearance level. So these are not obscure institutions. These are the top medical schools and universities in the country. This is a network of doctors who are presidents of the American Psychiatric Association, editors of leading journals, editors of leading books. It's the grandfathers of psychiatry. It's pervasive, it's institutionalized, it's structured, and it involves all the leaders of American psychiatry for the entire second half of the 20th century. Eli Lilly Company is the manufacturers of Prozac. At the end of the talk, there'll be a multiple choice exam that I'll be giving. One of the questions